People usually look at conflict as a series of contradictions and or clashes between two or more parties, often caused by different ideologies. According to Moore, Lindstrom, and Oregon 1996, there are 5 types of conflicts, which are information conflict, interest conflict, relationship conflict, structural conflict, and value conflict. The type of conflict related to our case study of the 13 May 1969 event is structural conflict. Structural conflict refers to oppressive behaviors exerted on others, including inequality and limited resources or opportunities, as well as the organization and social structures causing the imbalance of power, which justify all the chaos and riot that had happened during the event, which due to one heavy-sided government that leaned towards the Malays more than the Chinese and caused an imbalance of power.
Traditionally, the Malay Sultan of Malacca became a model for race harmony in Malaysia due to the Iskandar Shah system of administration. All of this changed in the matter of second due to British and Japanese colonial, which changed the system in Malaya, causing strong biases to rise and damaging racial relations in Malaya. The interest of the British promoted unlimited inbound migration of Indians and Chinese into Malaya, and a policy of divide and rule was implemented. This led in increasing gap among Malaya three races. The Japanese occupation often used the Malay to forward their objective in Malaya and being abusive to the Chinese. The Chinese mistook the situation with the slogan Asia for ASEAN, in which the Malay are the victims, such that hurtful feeling, cultural differences and biases have become the cause of the rift in unity in Malaya. The Malay-Chinese conflict did not adhere as the root of the miscommunication from the British and Japanese colonial countries planted another blank stand in the tragedy of the May 13, 1969 in Malaya.
The chronology of these events is broken down into 3 sections, which is before election, during election, and after elections. Before elections, Malays and Chinese fought again in Penang on November 1967. Before this, Malays and Chinese clashed in Sungai Pinang and Bukit Mertajam between 1959 and 1964. On 1968, lifers included 2 Malays and 11 Chinese. Most students protected them. During the elections, candidates disputed Clause 153 and Malay's rights as Bumiputra. MCP members were involved in interracial clashes in Kuala Lumpur. 3 police patrols assaulted by MLPs in Kepong on May 4, 1969. After the election, 11 till 12 May 1969, DAP and Gerakan Victory marches in Kuala Lumpur. Malays were furious when Chinese received more seats. Kampung Baru UMNO Youth met a state assemblyman on 12 May 1969 to organize a march too. Malay leaders gathered at Datuk Harun's home. Before the march, Tunku Abdul Rahman's family battled the Chinese. Setapak exacerbated Malay-Chinese animosity. Jalan Kepembel, Datuk Keramat, Pandan, Ceras and Kurunci were impacted. 29 of May 1969, 196 fatalities recorded, 439 injuries, 9,143 arrests, 5,561 charges, 6,000 lost residences, and 211 damaged automobiles, 753 burnt buildings. Lastly, since the 15 years alliance government, there have been sporadic Malay-Chinese riots, although none as damaging as the one on 13 May 1969.
There are 4 types of parties in this case. Primary parties can be explained as those who have direct engagement and have opposing goals in the conflict. Malay people and Chinese people had different reactions toward the result of the election. Mainly, the Chinese have held several parades at streets in Kuala Lumpur for Democratic Action Party and Gerakan Party. They violate the rules set by the authorities and make the Malay feel unsatisfied. Thus, the Malay also held parades for the United Malay National Organization, and when these two groups collided, riots then happened. While secondary parties have an indirect role in conflict, Democratic Action Party and Gerakan Party give support to the Chinese, knowing the fact that the actions in the parades were wrong. United Malay National Organization also gives support to the Malay, giving them the permission to gather as many as possible during the parades. For other interested parties, they can be defined as those who showed a major interest in the conflict. Both foreign journalists and local newspapers wanted to write about the incident, but they were put under censorship regulations by the government. The local newspaper felt unsatisfied as the regulations were put on them longer than the foreign journalists. Lastly, the intervening parties can include individuals who are not participating in the conflict, but if they were to get into the conflict, it would create a new outcome in the conflict. The government put curfew on several places like the Kuala Lumpur city center area in order to control the conflict between Malay and Chinese. The police and army also interfere in arresting the parties in the conflict. Yang di-Pertuan Agong also proclaimed a state of emergency under Section 150 of the Constitution in order to avoid the event from getting worse.
The root cause of the May 13 tragedy is generally due to the dissatisfaction with the privilege of the Malay people. People Action Party (PAP) expressing a vocal dissatisfaction with what is referred to as the privilege of the Malays in the Constitution. They claim that the rights of other races have been set aside as if they have been deprived of justice. But the fact is that the economic status of the Malays is the lowest compared to the Chinese. In the run-up to the 1969 election, the Democratic Action Party (DAP) and other opposition parties pledged on sensitive and racist issues, including raising questions of injustice, causing dissatisfaction and unrest among the people to increase. The second cause of May 13 tragedy is the differences in political parties. On 11 May and 12 May, the announcements of the election result in the West Malaysia shows a landslide victory for the opposition parties. The opposition's joy with the election result led to a march entering the capital. On the night of 11 and 12 May, the Chinese celebrate the election victory and mock the Malay peoples. After 2 nights of provocation by a group of Chinese, the Malays plan to stage massive demonstration and march around Kuala Lumpur. The violence continued into the night. Tunku blamed the opposition party for the problems but condemned retaliation and appealed to the country to calm down.
The third causes are subdivision policy and British colonial order, which is also known as Dasar Pecah dan Perintah British. This policy creates gaps between societies and impact racial economies. The economic activity was separated as the Chinese dominated commerce and industry, Indians in labor, while Malays in farming and civil service. The immigration of immigrants has triggered the Malay position of Bumiputra. The economic domination caused Malays to fall behind and caused segregation of races. The aftermath of these incidents, they create the new economic policy or Dasar Ekonomi Baru. The last causes are the culture and races difference. During the British colonization, the main races have been separated in all sectors, including their social life. As for the education, before the Razak Report or Laporan Razak were introduced, 4 streams of education were created according to the races, which caused the races
only learn about their races and leads to threat of racial unity. Magaran reported that 13 May 1969 tragedy are mainly because of the different interpretation among the races. Apart from that, the religion and misunderstanding also caused an uproar during the May 13 incidents. During the riots, DAP consistently bad-mouthing Malay with "Apa Melayu boleh buat" and "Melayu boleh balik jadi sakai," which leads to anger that caused the riots happen on May 13.
The 13 May 1969 incident was one of the deadliest race riots ever happened in Malaysia. This incident teaches Malaysians how important unity is among them. That being said, there are two main impacts that can be seen from the 13 May incident. First, several changes have been done to the federal constitution. The main cause of the 13 May race riot was how the Malay were left out in the economic sector, which led to the new economic policy. Also, the Malaysian constitution has been manipulated by the opposition, which uprised racial conflict between the Malay and other ethnicities. Therefore, several changes have been made to the constitution, such as freedom of speech and social freedom, which were used to ensure interracial justice. And finally, the 13 May incident also changed Malaysia's education system. The Malaysian government instilled patriotism through awareness, education, and knowledge to develop a strongly patriotic nation. For example, the current education system have been tailored to inculcate on bringing a sense of pride and dignity, as well as foster the youngster the sense of belonging to the country. These actions are necessary to develop a strong quality of youth and inspire people to bring glory and joy to Malaysian and represent the country in the sectors of education, trading, economy, sports, technology, and entertainment, locally as well as internationally.
Did harmony ever exist in Malaysia before? What went wrong in multiracial, multilingual, and multi-religious country that had enjoyed racial harmony and cooperation for 12 years after independence, that tolerance and understanding could be so abruptly terminated, and the various races should suddenly glare at each other and reject a way of life that appeared to have begun long before independence? Yes, a lot of things went wrong, as on 13 May 1969, murder, arson, and mayhem erupted. A solution for this tragedy to never happen again, Rukun Negara was introduced as a way to strengthen ties between race and ethnic in Malaysia. One of Rukun Negara's objectives is to build a Malaysian society that strives for greater harmony across the board. As the globe continues to evolve, racial peace in the country may be disrupted once more by the global expansion of ethnopopulism, an ideology that divides society into two factions based on race and religion, potentially fighting with each other. Therefore, every political parties in this nation should work on improving racial unity in Peninsular Malaysia and improving regional integration across the peninsula, Sabah and Sarawak. In addition, all politicians must refrain from exploiting racial feelings and sensitive subjects that may provoke racial conflicts in the country to prevent racial riots from repeating again. The government must also take swift and critical action against individuals who incite racial animosity and disrespect a faith.
In conclusion, the 13 May 1969 event is one of the deadliest race riots in Malaysia history, which makes it important for Malaysians to be patriotic considering the fights that our ancestors needed to go through in order to achieve the peace and unity that we have today. Despite the world's evolution, racial peace in some countries is still something that is considered privilege, and there are wars against each other just due to the differences in race, culture, and even religion. Fighting for the right to achieve peace, which should make Malaysians remember how lucky we are to live in a peace multiracial country.